This week on Political Capital, jobs, the economy, and the 2012 race. President Bill Clinton talks about policy and politics. He sits down with us at his job summit in Chicago. Then a conversation with the new mayor of the Windy City, Rahm Emanuel. And on the last word, playing politics with the debt ceiling. Welcome to Political Capital. My guest is the 42nd President of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton. Mr. President, when you won re-election in 1996, unemployment rate 5.2%. Barack Obama's going to have well over 8%. No president's been re-elected with a higher than 7.2% since World War II. It's going to be a tough slog, isn't it?
Well, I still believe he'll win. And I'll believe he'll win because I think he's got a better economic record than he's gotten credit for, and because I think he'll have more credible positions than his opponent if the Republicans stay anywhere near where they are right now. But I wouldn't be surprised if he could actually get the unemployment rate down a little faster than people think if they will do a few basic things. If they can speed up hiring the people that are already where their jobs are being offered. We've talked about this, you and I. There's more than 3 million jobs being posted today. We're filling them half as fast as we have in the past. You could speed that up to normal rate, get another 2 million jobs. If you could speed up the retrofitting of buildings, you could get another 1 million jobs, if you did it right. If we could clean out this bad mortgage debt, if we could use the Bank of America settlement as a model to now make sure all the investors, everybody's taken care of, so write these mortgages down to the value of the home and clean out the debt of the rest. I think if you could do those 3 things, I wouldn't be surprised if you could create 50% more jobs than anybody thinks.
When's the last time you talked to him about the economy?
A few weeks ago. But I try never to bother him. I really go out of my way not to do that. I think, if there's something I can do to help or he wants to talk, it's fine. But if I have some idea, I'll call his National Economic Advisor, Gene Sperling, who worked with me.
You have some familiarity with.
Or I call Vice President Biden because he's been working on all this jobs issue for some time. Or I talk to Jeff Immelt on the Jobs Council because he's interested in the efficiency issue. I don't know, he's got a complicated, tough job. I don't want to complicate that.
You've expressed your views about what Washington is fooling around with this debt ceiling, but there's a lot of stuff going on now. Harry Reid has said the Senate is going to cancel its July 4th recess, as the president requested the other night. Is now the time that President Obama should get Speaker Boehner and others and go to some place like Camp David and say, hey, we really got to spend some intense couple days and not just meet every 3rd or 4th day?
I don't know enough about the state of play to know that. I've told you what I think should be done. I think, first of all, the president should tie the budget negotiations to what he's been doing on the economy and say there's not a shred of evidence that settling this budget thing is the big thing holding up the economy. And the first thing is the economy. We can't have big spending cuts, and certainly not another round of tax cuts for people in my income group, which is what the Republicans want right now. Nor should we have big tax increases right now. We shouldn't do any of this. We should work on the economy. So what I'd like to do is to get what I'd like to see the Republicans agree to go ahead and honor our debt obligations. We'll look foolish if we don't pay our bills. A big, honorable country pays its bills, and we shouldn't be playing around with that. We incurred the debt, we ought to pay it.
Right.
Now, then both sides need to come up with 10-year plans.
But do you have a fear that Republicans may look at this now and say, hey, if we don't do anything, the other guy's going to get blamed. Just sitting there and no action, A, helps us with our base, and also if it doesn't help the economy, it's going to be the Obama economy.
Or they may think if we don't do anything, we might get blamed, but it'll still hurt him at election time if the economy's not in good shape. I don't know. First of all, nobody should want that, not after all the suffering the American people have been through, but that's a pretty big gamble. If they caught if they don't want to be caught working for the failure of the economy. I wouldn't think that would be a good thing. But they may think that, but I have no evidence of that. I'm not involved in all this now. All I can tell you is what I think they should do. I think look what we did here. I had Haley Barbour, I had Mitch Daniels, 2 Republican governors. I've got Pete Peterson, a lifetime Republican. I got Michael Porter, who's a moderate Republican from Harvard Business School, running panels here. Why? How can we do this? Because we're not debating that budget. We're debating what we can do in very specific ways to put America back to work, to create more jobs, to help people move.
Let me try one final political question. You've talked about the GOP field. You've praised some of the candidates. Who do you think would be the toughest Republican to face the Democrats next year, and what surprise should we look for in the next year?
Well, the only surprise you should look for is if we can figure out a way. Let me answer that one first. If we can find a way to clear this mortgage debt and secure a lot of people in their homes and all their neighbors in the value of their homes, if we can find a way to really make this energy efficiency on existing structures work, and if we can get this infrastructure bank going so we get manufacturing and construction going, what the surprise you look for in the next year is a lot more jobs being created than anybody thinks right now.
Which Republican would you least like to face, have your party face?
Well, I'd least like to face the one that I'm most agree with, that I think is the most moderate. But that may not be the best politics. It's so predictable. I mean, it's so unpredictable now. And I'm afraid every time I say something nice if I say something nice about Governor Huntsman, whom I think did a good job for us in China and was a creative governor.
You think he'd be the strongest candidate?
Well, I don't know, because he hadn't told us exactly specifically what he wants, but I certainly am impressed with the way he started. I think Governor Romney's doing a better job this time than he did 4 years ago. But I think, on the other hand, I saw Michele Bachmann speak at that Conservative Political Action Committee, and I've seen her several times since. She comes across as having vigor and energy and believing what she says. I don't agree with what she's saying, but she comes across as real. So I've been so out of politics, I don't know that I know what'll sell or what'll be best for them. All I can tell you is I'll make this prediction. Whatever the unemployment rate is, if it doesn't go up, if it still keeps going down, and the policy direction stays more or less where it is, I will be surprised if the president is not reelected, because I believe he has done a better job than he has gotten credit for, and I think a lot of the members of our party in Congress have. And I think that, fooling around with this, the credit of America is not good strategy. So I think he'll make it. But what I want more than anything else is to see him get together and work this out and get to work on the jobs issue.
Mr. President, you still sound pretty sharp on politics to most of us. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks,
Best of luck for the rest of your Clinton Global Initiative. Thank you, sir.
You.
When we come back, we'll talk to one of President Clinton's former underlings, now the mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel. Welcome back. We're here with the 46th mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, a veteran of 6.5 weeks. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Mayor. Let me talk about
6.5 great weeks, I'll tell you.
That's what people in Chicago say. Let me ask you first about the national picture. President Obama faces re-election with an unemployment rate probably going to be around 9%, maybe in the 8s. No president since World War II has ever been re-elected with an unemployment rate of higher than 7.2%. That's going to make a very tough slog for him, isn't it?
Well, I think I could say this for him. His attitude and his perspectives, yeah, it may be tough for him, but it's tougher for the people that can't find a job, and his focus is making sure that they have a job or the ability to go find a job. They know, and it's true, he inherited one of the worst economies since the Great Depression. Not just an economy, but sectors. The auto industry, America's industrial base, on its back, broken. The financial sector, credit markets, on its back, broken, so you couldn't get a loan for your car, for a kid to go to college or to buy a home. And he dealt with that, and now he is making sure that the other decisions we make strengthen America and strengthen the economy so people can find jobs.
Well, there are those, including some Democrats, who say there's no coherent economic jobs message coming out of Washington. Jobs have been, in your six and a half weeks, you've done a lot for jobs out here. But shouldn't there be a national Democratic message on jobs, and what should it be?
We have a, first of all, I'm the mayor of the city of Chicago. My focus, 100%, is the city, solving the problems we have here so we can grow, not just economically, but you can also raise a family, raise your children here, and your children can feel as attached to the city as you do as a parent or an adult. That's my focus. Second, as it relates to that particular question, it's not a message issue. It's actually policy. So you could talk about the message, that's the political part of it, Al. Mm-hmm. But the best, and I know this for a fact, the president is focused on what are the critical areas, like in technology, like in infrastructure, that will help America grow long-term and create jobs in the immediate time frame.
Are there a couple things you'd like to see done that would help everybody, but help Chicago too, to help you add jobs like you have with All Green and United and the
Well, one is, what is critical is our infrastructure. And I mean our roads, our bridges, our schools, our broadband. And investing in that area creates jobs today and makes us more economically competitive, either as a city, a state, or a country. One of the ways I was successful in getting some of the companies you mentioned to place jobs here in the city of Chicago, because A, we have a trained and educated workforce here in the city of Chicago, and it's convenient for them to get from place of work to their office, and that is a big selling point. When I went around at GE, I said, how many of you take the CTA or mass transit to work? 7 out of 8 hands went up. I want to invest in our mass transit so we stay competitive, and the reason Chicago won those jobs was because of the convenience to get to work. So it's a big issue. And if it's big for GE and their decision, well, it's big for me as mayor. The idea I proposed at the Conference of Mayors was you allow corporations to repatriate their corporate profits at a lower rate than the 35, 15%. And that 15% of the revenue would fund a Rebuild America jobs account. In 2005, when corporate America had the lower rate, the jobs were not created. We left
they brought it back, but they spent it on dividends.
Whatever they did,
right.
They didn't do the jobs, which was the basic explicit understanding. So this time, if you did it, given the amount of corporate profits offshore being held offshore, you wouldn't leave the job creation to them. So you would lower the rate. A proposal I'm working with Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, and I proposed it at the Conference of Mayors, is lower the rate one time, but whatever revenue, rather than going in the general account, would go into an infrastructure Rebuild America
but the
job.
Joint Tax Committee says there won't be revenue, that over 5 or 10 years it loses money.
Well, they say that over 5 or 10 years. First of all, I don't think they take into account the infrastructure. They're only looking at this side of the ledger. You got to look at both sides. You need 2 eyes to look at it.
So they're wrong.
Well, here's the other way. Here's another idea. The first $10 billion stays at the 35% rate.
Right.
Everything after that drops to the lower rate. So there's an incentive, and you keep then some of the higher. And all the lower rate goes into the infrastructure.
Republicans to go along with it?
Well, I think, yes, because I think, A, here's the deal. This would be my view. They'd be interested in the repatriating, rather,
right,
of the corporate profits at the lower rate. And I think corporate America would be into this, and I've talked to a number of CEOs.
Yeah.
And the corporate America and also would be interested in the infrastructure investments. And that'd be a way that I think you could, with that, really start, A, creating jobs today, making the American economy more competitive on infrastructure. And you take 2 ideas that both parties have advocated singularly and combine them to solve a national problem. Now, there's challenges to it, but that's just one idea.
We'll go to a real easy one. As you look at that Republican presidential field right now, what's any surprises and anyone who...
Is this a freebie for me?
A freebie, an absolute freebie. Anyone would be the strongest candidate.
Here's what my view is on this. The Republican primary voters will pick who they want. Then the general election voters will pick who they want. Politics is about choice.
Right.
I think the American people know straight up that the President of the United States inherited one of the worst conditions the country had been in over 70 years,
right,
and dealt with it. The question is who has the ideas for the future. And I think they'll see him with the right priorities and the right values versus another candidate. That is my belief, because I think the president works tirelessly about strengthening this country.
I'm not going to get you to say which Republican candidate.
It's not for me. I'm not a Republican. I think we can establish this fact. I am not a Republican primary voter.
Mr. Mayor, thank you so much. And when we come back, Michele Bachmann.
I want my candidacy for the presidency of the United States to stand for a moment when we, the people, stand once again for the independence from a government that has gotten too big and spends too much and has taken away too much of our liberties.
Welcome back. We'll go to Margaret, Carlson, and Cato Byrne in just a moment. But first, in a few short weeks, Michele Bachmann has shaken up the Republican 2012 field. Bloomberg News political reporter John McCormick has been covering her and joins me now from Chicago. John, rather than meet her Waterloo, she launched her candidacy in Waterloo, Iowa. You were there. How did it go?
Well, you know, she had a pretty good week. Other than a factual error involving movie star John Wayne and serial killer John Wayne Gacy, she really did have a good week. She had her announcement in Waterloo. It was, well received, and on the eve of that announcement, she got some very good news from the Des Moines Register's Iowa poll, which showed that she was in a statistical tie with Mitt Romney in Iowa among likely caucus goers. So that gave her some real momentum heading into that announcement. After the announcement, she headed off to New Hampshire and South Carolina to show that she's not just an Iowa candidate, although she's coming back to Iowa this holiday weekend, and that's really going to be the place where she hopes to build her campaign.
Well, they have a straw poll out there in August, which, whether justified or not, commands a great deal of attention. You're going to be spending a lot of time in the Hawkeye State. How does she stand now as far as that Iowa straw poll is concerned, and who are her contenders?
She's got some nice momentum going into it. It's about 5 weeks out, and it's a real test of organizational ability. The candidates try to get as many people physically to Ames, Iowa as they can to vote in this straw poll, and she's got a lot of energy heading into that. Now, there's increasing speculation that Rick Perry, the governor of Texas, might get in this race. There's even the possibility that he might show up at the straw poll, maybe not to real aggressively compete, but maybe to sort of make an appearance there. That would be a real challenge to her in Iowa, because Perry could appeal to a lot of the same sort of Tea Party activists that she really form her base.
Right now, John, though, is she the clear favorite to win that straw poll? Is there anybody else who is given much of a shot at winning it?
Not really. I mean, she really is sort of the front runner heading into this thing. Tim Pawlenty is making a real serious effort to compete in the straw poll, but boy, the polling in Iowa does not look very good for him at this point.
Right.
So unless he has a real ground game that we're not familiar with, that's really going to turn out a lot of people, it really seems like she has the advantage heading into that mid-August event.
John, you made a reference earlier to her mixing up John Wayne and the serial killer John Wayne Gacy. She makes mistakes like this, though, rather often. Any reason why? Any theory?
Well, I mean, it's it's sort of the nature of being a person who's really out there pushing the envelope in terms of political rhetoric, that sometimes you overstep a little bit, and that will be a challenge for her. Although on the day of her announcement, other than that one slip up in a subsequent interview, her announcement speech was fairly polished, and she stuck to it, and it was fairly well organized messaging.
Okay, John McCormick in Chicago, just a step away from Iowa. Thank you very much. And let me turn now to Margaret and Kate. The first Obama press conference in almost 3 months. How did he do, Margaret, and what did you come away struck by?
Well, it's a sign of how desperate the situation in Washington is that he insulted the Congress by comparing them to his middle school daughters unfavorably. But we're coming down to a wire here on the debt ceiling, and it seems like the Republicans just don't realize it. I mean, we're about to inflict, the largest self-inflicted wound on the American economy in history. And Republicans aren't putting anything on the table. They're being asked, really, for 1%, closing tax loopholes after Democrats have put on the table over $1 trillion in cuts to programs they really care about.
Kate, do you think that the Republicans have a losing hand on the debt
Oh,
ceiling?
Al, let's stay with President Obama for a moment.
Yep.
I thought the press conference was really stunning in this respect. I thought he was peevish. I thought it was thoroughly political. He's clearly in a mode to assign blame rather than say something constructive. And he's lecturing leaders on Capitol Hill. When he submitted his own budget early in the year, deficits increased as far as the eye could see, voted down in the Senate 97 zip, and he hasn't done a thing since, whatever. And he's carrying on about hedge fund manager and corporate jet owners, which is really thuggish. 6 times he mentioned a tax break that would raise $3 billion over 10 years when we need $4 trillion in savings over the next 10 years.
All right, let me ask you both. 15 seconds apiece. Max, will there be a default sometime in the next 5 weeks, Kate?
I do not see how they reach a deal, given how far apart they are, the parties.
So you think it's likely there will be?
I think they certainly risk a short one.
Okay, Margaret, 15 seconds.
If Republicans won't close a loophole on Gulfstream jets, I'm feeling that there's not going to be an agreement.
Well, I would agree. My reporting suggests that you're both right, but I can't quite imagine that happening.
Yes,
but I
right.
can't quite get there. And I will say about the press conference, I'm sort of halfway between you. I think it did show he was rusty, and that's why presidents ought to hold press conferences more than that. It helps prepare them as well as the public. But anyway, thank you both for joining us, and thank all of you. And happy 4th to everybody, and we'll see you again next week.
Political Capital is a production of Bloomberg Television.